Mike News tweeted a devastating chart on religion in America from a recent religious landscape study, and I wanted to share it with you here. This shows the percentage of Americans who say religion is, quote, very important to them from the different generations. So let's take a look. Whoa. So the silent generation, people born from 1928 to 1945, 67% of them say religion is very important to them. Then you have baby boomers from 1946 to 1964, they were born, 59%, so a little bit lower. Generation X after them, from 1965 to 1980, 53%. Then you have older millennials. I'm in that category. I was born in 1988. 44%, so another drop. And then you have younger millennials born from 1990 to 1996. 38% of them say religion is, quote, very important to them. What we're witnessing here is a societal transformation happening right in front of our eyes. It's really something incredible. Now, this fact kind of makes our case the most. There are other facts that, we wouldn't be too excited about. So, for example, I think it's 70%, between 70 and 76%, depending on what poll you look at, that say I'm Christian in America. So that's still an overwhelming majority. And that's something, if I look at that, I think I'd like more people to be non-religious, but hey, it is what it is. But when you look at the nuns category, 20% or 21% of the American people are now in that category. Now, when I say nuns, I don't mean N-U-N-S. I mean N-O-N-E-S. So nuns as in I'm unaffiliated. I don't believe in any of the organized religions. Now, in that category, that doesn't mean that they're atheists. Doesn't even mean that they're agnostics. They could be deists and believe in a god, but they're not part of any organized religion. Or they could be weird Deepak Chopra spiritualist kind of people that have new age funky beliefs. But either way, that number is rising, and the number of people that believe religion is very important to them is dropping, and it's dropping really fast. So even though a high percentage of people still say they're religious, and still say in the US, hey, I'm Christian, what they really mean by that now is more of a cultural Christianity, where they say, hey, my parents were Christian, I'm Christian because my parents were Christian, I was taken to church every once in a while, on Sundays when I was a kid, I had a little bit of religious training on the weekends, maybe. So I call myself Christian, and I kind of tentatively believe in the stuff in there, but I'm going to live my life in a totally secular way. They don't run to the Bible to try to find rules on how to act in everyday life. So this is something that's overwhelmingly positive. Now, naturally, the question that branches off from this is, why is this? Why is it that there's been a move away, certainly from fundamentalist religiosity, but even just away from religiosity? Well, it's hard to pin it on one thing, and to a certain extent, this is all conjecture, so we're just kind of theorizing here. But I would argue that the three most important things that led to this were, number one, secular education, number two, entertainment, believe it or not, and number three, the internet. So education is important because if you're taught something from when you're young, it's the default position. It's just a fallback, like it's the duh position to you. So if you're raised in a context where you're getting Christian fundamentalist propaganda pumped in your head from when you're a kid, you're probably going to default to that when you're older. If you're raised in a context where it's fundamentalist Sunni Islam or Shia Islam or Hinduism, you're probably going to default to that. But if you're raised in a context where it's secular education, where you're taught pluralism, and so to each their own, hey, no person's better or worse just based on their cultural background or whatever. You're taught multiculturalism, you're taught tolerance, you're taught open-mindedness, you're taught math and science and reading and creative writing and secular topics that are not trying to indoctrinate you. If you're taught like that, you're going to default to that. And even if you had a little bit of religious training growing up, it's going to be like an afterthought. Like, okay, yeah, that's my identity. And you just kind of lump in. You could say to somebody, hey, I'm an American. but you'd also file like Christian or whatever, or Jewish or whatever religion you grew up in as in that kind of a category. Like it just is what it is. It's an ethnicity. It's not necessarily buying into anything. See what I mean? So secular education is incredibly important. And by the way, if other nations want to get less fundamentalist, this is a manual to do it. You need secular education. You need people not being taught fairy tales and myths and voodoo and, hey, we're right and the other are wrong. You can't have that in schools. So you need that. You need entertainment is so important. People don't get it. This one is seemingly less out of left field. But what does entertainment do? What do movies and music and, TV shows, and what happens when somebody's exposed to that? They like it. They like it. They fall in love with certain plots in different shows. And if you're exposed to other people in that context. You never met an American, but hey, I watched a TV show with this American guy, and this American guy's the good guy in the show, and now I got nothing against the Americans, or whatever the case is. If you have entertainment, people actually learn, or they accept the idea that there's nothing wrong with valuing life on this earth. You want to laugh, you want to have a good time, you want to smile, you want to be with friends. So if the entertainment fosters that kind of a culture, that's positive. As opposed to if you're only nonstop learning dogmatic beliefs and religion and ultra-nationalism, that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing. And then, of course, one of the biggest ones is also the internet, like I said. And the internet, it just makes it so you can fact-check everything in real time. So if you have the intellectual curiosity enough to look up something, if even you're 5% unsure, well, then over time, the internet is going to provide you with this outlet to care about truth and to get to answers. Now, there's a downside to it as well, because it can also feed into the people who are dogmatic and ain't going to change. If you're a neo-Nazi, you could look for those forums and reinforce your ideology. If you're a white supremacist, if you're an Islamist or a jihadist, that happens as well. But overall, more information, more data, more fact-checking ability available to you in a split second. Most people are going to be able to challenge their worldview and adjust accordingly as you move along. You know, back in the day, if you're sitting in a bar in 1972 and somebody says something that seems outlandish but you don't know, and they're confident about it, perhaps you just kind of casually accept it, and 3 weeks later you're parroting it as if it's true. Today we have the internet and wider availability of the internet, if it's uncensored and you can go anywhere. That would make it so that we make people more secular and less fundamentalist. So those are some of the biggest things here. But also, free speech is non-negotiable. Let's keep that in mind too, and that helps with the spread of secular ideas and agnostic and atheistic ideas. The idea of free thinking and critical thinking. If you continue to shine the light of reason in dark corners where it ain't allowed, eventually reason's going to win. Why do you think the people who are dogmatic have to turn to violence? Because they know they can't win if you're having a debate or a discussion. So, hey, just shut them up by force. Well, you have to use force on me, don't you? Because you know I'll destroy you if we just have a conversation or if we have a debate. So that's one that we must protect at all costs. Free speech is non-negotiable. And this is the manual to move forward and to create people who are irreligious. And the final thing I'll say is just, why is this important? Because some people say, well, come on, you're just being a dick and you want people to act more like you. No. I'm fine if you're religious. You can be religious. No problem with that at all. Secularism is the important thing. So you know that you can't force your religion on other people through the government. Okay? And that's why this is important, because in modern enlightened societies, that one's non-negotiable. You can't have people who say, hey, I'm religious. My interpretation of my religion and my interpretation of my God says women need to shut the fuck up and get in the kitchen. Says, you know, the role of gays is you can't get married and you don't have freedom. You can't have people force their dogmatism on you in a free society. So this is positive because it moves us more towards a society that values civil liberties and freedoms. And that's why we need to continue to go down this path.